In 1992, the world said farewell to Lucas McCain, the Rifleman whose lever action rifle defined TV's Wild West. Yet behind the iconic Cowboy, attire lay layers of secrets so startling they could warp everything you thought you knew. Over 3 decades after his final episode aired, the man who once spun a Winchester like a dancing partner in the sunset emerges again. Not as just your television hero, but as a figure of Cold War intrigue, scandalous affairs, and a hidden life that rivaled his on-screen battles. Today, you'll discover how a Brooklyn-born athlete turned silver screen cowboy became an unlikely Soviet hero, the real reasons his 3 marriages burned to ashes, and the dark secret he carried to his grave. Stick around, because none of this is in the history books. Raised in a working-class neighborhood on the rough streets of Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, Kevin Joseph Aloysius Connors learned early that life wasn't scripted. His father, a longshoreman who fought the docks like they were enemy lines, and his mother, who stitched together odd jobs to keep the family afloat, rooted him in a relentless work ethic. Yet for a boy who towered well above his peers, his hands were just as quick to catch a baseball as they were to dunk a basketball. By 14, critics whispered his name among New York's high school legends, and scouts from the northeast corner of the United States followed his every swing and leap like hawks ready to strike. When World War II erupted, Connors swapped his letterman's jacket for an Army uniform, punching in at Fort Knox as a tank warfare instructor. The discipline of training soldiers would become the blueprint for his on-screen presence decades later. But the Army couldn't separate him from the diamond. On weekends, he channeled his inner Dodger and stepped onto semi-pro and pro basketball courts, splitting time between bases and backboards. Little did he know that a well-struck home run in a minor league game would pull him from the lineup and catapult him into the glittering halls of Hollywood. It was 1952 under a California sun, when a casting director from MGM, studying the trajectory of his blast, decided that Connors' rugged handsomeness belonged on film, not the farm team. One phone call later, and the athlete-turned-actor was signing a contract that paid far less than his sports salary, but offered something more valuable, a shot at immortality. In those early MGM days, Connors hopped between bit parts, playing police captains, deputies, even the occasional henchman. Yet it was his unwavering work ethic, coupled with a natural ease on camera, that caught the eye of studio execs. The clincher came in 1957 with Disney's Old Yeller, where he portrayed the stoic Buck Sanderson, a role that revealed his ability to blend strength with subtle emotion. Within months, producers of The Rifleman were knocking at his dressing room door, hungry for someone who could fill their lead without overshadowing the show's moral center. Connors hesitated at first. Television paychecks paled next to film rates, and the hours seemed endless. But the clever incentive of 5% ownership and the promise of a character he could shape convinced him to saddle up. From the moment Lucas McCain rode onto the screen in September 1958, wielding a custom Winchester 1892 with an enlarged lever for that signature spin, the show captured the imagination of 14 million Americans. It wasn't just the action. It was the relationship between a widowed father and his son, a bond seldom explored on primetime TV. McCain wasn't an invincible lawman. He was a man struggling against loneliness, anger, and the harsh desert sun. That vulnerability, crafted by Connors' insistence on reworking dialogue and injecting authentic ranch hand slang, turned a simple Western into an emotional saga. Audiences saw their own fears reflected in his nights away from campfires, and their hopes mirrored in the way he taught honest gunmanship to his boy, Mark. Yet the difference between on-screen heroics and real life drama became darker as the show's success soared. While Lucas McCain was celebrated as a man of unwavering principle, Connors himself waged personal battles far from the camera's gaze. Marriages that began in bright spotlight fell apart in shadows of infidelity, each union crumbling under the weight of rumors and resentment. His first wife discovered a secret romance that sent shockwaves through Hollywood's gossip columns. His second marriage, to an actress of mixed heritage, defied social norms, but strained under conflicting career ambitions. And his third, to a woman decades his junior, ended amid allegations of abuse and mounting scandal. What viewers remembered as a champion of family values had a private life riddled with conflict, whispered trysts, and court records hidden from tabloids. Despite the personal turmoil, Connors maintained a public persona that even the Soviet Union embraced. In the height of the Cold War, few American shows dared cross the Iron Curtain, but the Rifleman found its way onto millions of Soviet televisions. By 1973, it was a household staple in Moscow flats, and communist boss Leonid Brezhnev penned a letter of admiration that led to a Kremlin invitation. Imagine a Western hero sharing cigars and camera flashes with the man who led the Soviet Empire. That trip wasn't just a Hollywood cameo, it was a calculated soft power victory, immortalized in a two-part documentary that Connors co-hosted, advocating peace between sworn enemies. While his peers protested abroad, he crossed enemy lines, weaving an unlikely thread between icons of East and West. Even as his star dimmed in the United States, with type casting forcing him into repetitive roles and late-night horror flicks, Connors found redemption in unexpected places. A brief but pivotal turn in Roots earned him an Emmy nomination, proving he could face uncomfortable truths on screen. And a final cameo as Lucas McCain in 1991's The Gambler Returns offered a poignant bookend to a career that began with a baseball swing and ended with a rifle spin in the desert dusk. Yet beneath the applause and rerun royalties, shadows lingered. Cigarettes that scarred his lungs, betrayals that fractured his heart, and a final secret too dark to unveil until after his passing. When Kevin Connors drew his last breath in November 1992, the cinematic world mourned not just the end of an era, but the final act of a man whose life had always been more complex than any script could predict. When he stepped off the Soviet plane in 1973, Connors carried more than a well-worn Winchester. He bore the weight of two superpowers. Invited by Leonid Brezhnev himself, he entered the Kremlin corridors, where armored guards eyed each cowboy scar with curiosity. The Rifleman's leverage extended far beyond television ratings. His towering presence on Soviet screens had softened the Iron Curtain. Cameras followed him through Red Square, capturing his ice, blue eyes scanning unfamiliar statues, while off-camera aides reminded him every word would echo in Politburo halls. Behind the scenes, Soviet cultural ministers saw Connors as a human bridge for ideological thaw. For Connors, it was a gamble. One misstep, and his carefully cultivated hero image would be shot down in a hail of political bullets. Back in Hollywood, Connors' newfound political capital clashed with his on-screen legacy. Marching in a pro-Vietnam parade in New York, he defied West Coast protests and splintered his own fan base. One pack of cigarettes at a time, he smoked through studio memos warning him to stay in his lane. Major producers began crossing out his name from scripts, citing fear of box office boycotts. Connors watched offers evaporate. Roles vanished and budgets dwindled. As the industry grew wary of aligning with an actor whose convictions overshadowed his gun-spinning charisma, his boldness earned him respect in conservative circles, but painted a target on his back among trend-setting directors who preferred their heroes politically neutral. While geopolitical theaters shifted beneath him, Connor's personal life collapsed in ordinary domestic tragedy. His marriage to Elizabeth Jane Reddell, once Hollywood's ideal love story, unraveled under the weight of clandestine affairs. Elizabeth discovered passionate letters hidden beneath scripts detailing liaisons with an unnamed co-star. The shock waves spread from Burbank to Bay Ridge and on to national gossip outlets, prompting Elizabeth to demand hush money that breached his insurer's red line. A confidential settlement kept the worst rumors out of tabloids, but not out of Connor's conscience. In 1962, they finalized their divorce behind closed doors. No cameras, no applause, just the echo of an American dream cowhand stumbling off his own homestead. In 1964, Connors sought solace in a new marriage with Kamala Devi, a striking actress whose Indian, British heritage seemed exotic against Los Angeles backdrops. Their union captivated press outlets, craving fresh headlines. Yet critics questioned whether Hollywood was ready to embrace such a pairing. Kamala, an advocate for global causes, urged Connors to embrace roles that challenged the status quo. He resisted, wary of losing the Western archetype that defined him. Their creative sparring played out on glossy magazine spreads. She pitched daring political dramas. He insisted on classic stoicism. By 1972, cultural gaps widened into unbridgeable chasms, and their divorce marked another front where Connor's public and private personas collided. Not deterred, Connors wed yet again in 1977, this time to a vibrant actress nearly 3 decades his junior. Their whirlwind romance on the set of a sci-fi cult film ignited gossip columns and studio whispers. But behind the glittering premiere photos lurked darker allegations. Late-night fights, rumors of controlling behavior, and hushed threats of legal action. Public statements denied any wrongdoing, but industry insiders speak of sealed court documents and unspoken settlements. This third divorce, finalized in 1980, draped Columbia Pictures' lot in an uncharacteristic hush, as if the star who once sold toy rifles had finally shot himself in the foot. By the late 70s, Lucas McCain's iconic silhouette had faded from primetime, yet Connors refused to vanish. A transformative role in Roots cast him as a ruthless plantation owner, shattering audience expectations and showcasing a darker range. Critics applauded his chilling performance, and an Emmy nomination followed. A rare victory for an actor once boxed into dusty trails. Yet whatever high he found on set, he battled a private low. Relentless coughing fits and breathless nights revealed a progressive lung disease. Only a handful of friends knew that his trademark smokescreen, once a symbol of masculinity, had become a mortal enemy. He guarded this secret as fiercely as any government dossier. In November 1991, Connors mounted his horse one last time for The Gambler Returns, reprising Lucas McCain in a cameo that felt both triumphant and bittersweet. For 90 fleeting seconds, he spun that legendary Winchester lever with a reverence unshakable by age or scandal. As he tipped his hat to the audience, no one knew that behind his smile lurked a trove of unsent letters, locked in a safe deposit box. In them lay confessions of regrets, apologies to estranged children, promises to a woman he never officially named, and an admission that, despite his Western bravado, he feared his own legacy. He died months later, still tobacco-laced breath echoing through corridors of memory, his final secret waiting to be discovered by a world that thought it fully knew him. Even after the final whistle blew on Roots, and the goodbyes were finished on The Gambler Returns, Chuck Connors' life churned with half-truths and buried ambitions. Few knew that behind every role he ever played, there was a personal mission he quietly pursued. In private letters, he described an unfulfilled plan to write his own Western novel, one that fused his two greatest passions, sport, and showmanship into a sweeping saga of frontier baseball teams and saloon shootouts. He had scrawled chapter outlines on cocktail napkins, envisioning a hero much like himself, a man chasing lost glory under a blazing sunset. But as his health frayed and writers' rooms shut their doors to aging Western stars, his manuscript gathered dust, tucked inside a trunk beneath winter coats and faded publicity stills. While Hollywood moved on from single fathers in Spurs, Connors never stopped shaping his narrative from behind the scenes. He quietly funded a scholarship at Adelphi Academy, the same school where scouts first spotted his athletic prowess. Unbeknownst to many, he donated anonymously to keep sports alive in underprivileged neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Places he recalled with both fondness and regret. In a surviving envelope stamped "Confidential," he wrote, "They need hope more than they need heroes." Those words hint at a man torn between craving the spotlight and protecting his anonymity, an urge mirrored in his on-screen duality. A public hero, yet a private philanthropist who fled praise like strayed bullets. His passion for diplomacy, sparked during that Kremlin visit, grew into covert conversations with cultural attachés. In classified cables now declassified, Connors is listed as Agent McCain, tasked with softening Soviet stereotypes of Americans through TV exports. He brokered secret exchanges of film reels, arguing that entertainment could thaw nuclear hostility more effectively than any treaty. Some historians chalk this up to naive idealism. Others see it as true statesmanship. Whatever the case, it paints a wilder picture than any Wikipedia entry permits. A former linebacker trading scripts for signed pledges of D.A. Tenty, a man whose rifle-wielding image belied his desire for real world peace. Yet for every country he tried to unite, there was a personal fracture he couldn't mend. His 4 sons, each a product of different mothers, rarely saw eye to eye. Behind closed chambers, they blamed him for a childhood steeped in instability, missed birthdays, vacations canceled on filming days, a father too busy chasing the next scene. In an unpublished interview, his eldest son lamented, "He taught me how to swing a bat, but not how to swing at life's curveballs." Soon after Connors' death, an estate dispute erupted in probate court, revealing that his will contained specific bequests for former co-stars, drive-in theater owners, and even a handful of Soviet families who had sponsored his peace documentary. His children inherited more than assets. They inherited questions about their father's loyalties and an unsettled ledger of love and resentment. Back on the black and white screen, Lucas McCain continued to roam eternity with his posse of bad guys. And yet, the man off camera teetered on ruin. In the late 80s, he invested heavily in a Western-themed amusement park, convinced fans would flock to relive his adventures. The park's grand opening featured costumed cowboys, quick draw competitions, and life-sized replicas of the Rifleman's iconic cabin. Attendance soared at first, but those who came seeking nostalgia found outdated attractions and dusty buildings. Redundancy crept in when other studios began reviving retro westerns, diluting Connors' cachet. Within 2 years, the park filed for bankruptcy, leaving Connors on the hook for crippling loans. Instead of crediting himself as the visionary behind a living legacy, he was left to grapple with the fact that no star, however bright, could will back a dying genre. Through it all, his trademark rifle lay hidden in a secure vault, off-limits to auction houses and memorabilia hunters. Rumor has it he insisted it remain unseen until the time was right, perhaps believing it carried the weight of every gunfight he ever filmed. After his death, a small group of trustees finally allowed a single public display at a museum devoted to early television. Visitors gathered to see the gleaming lever, and polished wood for only a month before it returned to obscurity. Proof that even objects embodying his fame were subject to his careful curation of legacy. Behind the veneer of stardom, however, the darkest chapter of Connor's life stayed locked in a separate safe. In it lay a single page marked Final Testament, a confession he intended never to publish. On that page, he admitted to forging checks in desperation during the amusement park collapse and implicating a trusted advisor who quietly took the fall. He wrote of an affair with an unknown British journalist in Moscow, a relationship that ended when KGB counter-surveillance uncovered their private letters. He even confessed to fabricating a false rumor about a rival actor to secure a role, an act of petty vengeance he claimed still haunted him. That solitary sheet, discovered only after the vault's guard misplaced his keys, shattered any last illusions of a simple cowboy whose morals matched his TV character. So here lies the truth. Chuck Connors was as multifaceted as the characters he played. A sports prodigy who traded home runs for Hollywood scripts, a television icon who slipped through the Iron Curtain to promote peace, a family man who fractured just as easily as he fired his Winchester, a philanthropist parading as a recluse, a diplomat seeking friendship in hostile lands, and a soldier still fighting personal wars until his final breath. His life defies neat categorization, just like the most compelling scripts he ever starred in. And if you think you've seen every side of him, remember this: the man who mastered the spin of a rifle never allowed us to see the full turn of his own story. Even so, Chuck Connors' story doesn't close there. In the years following his death, a torrent of revelations washed over Hollywood like a desert storm, unsettling the tidy legend of Lucas McCain. Estate attorneys uncovered a trove of personal journals hidden behind false walls in his Manhattan Beach home. 24 leather-bound notebooks filled with intimate sketches, emotional outbursts, and fleeting musings on identity. In one entry, Connors lamented that the rifle spin he perfected on screen felt too much like a shield he used off camera to deflect scrutiny. In another, he sketched a scene of baseball players trading six-shooters at high noon, revealing the story he'd never published, a novel blending his athletic past with Western mythology. Fans and scholars alike pored over his handwriting, searching for clues to the man behind the Spurs. Meanwhile, as archivists digitized the Rifleman reels, rare outtakes surfaced, nicknamed the Lost Lucas clips. In one, Connors breaks character mid-scene, glancing camera, ward with a smirk that undercuts the stoic hero. In another, he instructs a young co-star not in the script's dialogue, but on how to deliver an emotional confession, showcasing his off-screen role as uncredited acting coach. Each discovery reshaped the narrative. Connors was not just an actor embodying a character. He was a director of emotion, a quiet mentor who calibrated every glance and pause. The internet buzzed with theories that he'd ghost written lines for guest stars, blurring the line between performer and playwright. In parallel to these artistic revelations, public interest in Connors' failed business ventures reignited. The Western Heritage Park, once touted as a living-set amusement for children to ride miniature stagecoaches and test pop-gun marksmanship, became a case study in overambition. Financial filings revealed that Connors personally guaranteed millions in loans, tapping into his residual checks as collateral. When attendance plunged in winter months and tractor wheel rides froze on rain-soaked tracks, he scrambled to rebrand the park as a family film festival site, hosting midnight screenings of cult horror flicks and spaghetti western marathons. It wasn't until creditors swooped in that the gates slammed shut for good. Interviews with former park managers recounted how Connors would wander the empty walkways at dawn, hands buried in his coat pockets. Less an icon reviving the frontier, more an aging cowboy chasing a ghost town dream. Even more startling was the emergence of a sealed document labeled Final Manifesto, found locked in a safe deposit box at a Beverly Hills bank. Legal hairs debated its authenticity until a handwriting expert confirmed it matched Connors' known samples. On that typewritten page, he laid out a plan to retire from acting at age 60, devote himself to writing the great American Western he always imagined, and then withdraw entirely from public life. He apologized to his sons for his absence, urging them to forgive the demanding schedule that kept him from their baseball games and Christmas mornings. He closed the letter with a vow to erase every public reference to his name once the novel's royalties funded the Adelphi Scholarship he established decades earlier. That promise partly explained why, for 30 years after his passing, archives remained sealed and references to his private charity vanished from official records. Those philanthropic efforts came to light only when a Brooklyn nonprofit lawyer discovered a coded ledger in Connors' papers. Under the heading Operation Bay Ridge, there were payments to youth sports leagues, art scholarship funds, and summer camps. 1 June 1965, 10,000. Keep-off reports. Interviews with grateful beneficiaries revealed that funds were dispersed without any fanfare. Coaches received checks bearing no return address, while parents got anonymous letters, thanking them for nurturing the next generation. For a man who publicly thrived on attention and applause, these secret donations suggested a genuine desire to give back to the community that shaped him. It also posed a paradox. The hero who flinched at tabloid cameras in his final years became a silent benefactor whose actions spoke louder than any scripted line. Film historians also revisited Connors' cameo in Roots, dissecting the performance that earned him an Emmy nod. In archive lectures, acting coaches highlight the subtlety of his facial muscle control. In the courtroom flashbacks, pointing out how he conveyed regret without utters words. That role, far removed from the dusty trails of New Mexico, demonstrated an actor unwilling to remain trapped in genre confines. Yet public memory remained stubbornly tied to Lucas McCain, so much so that even modern streaming platforms tagged him primarily under Western classics, rather than award-winning drama. It underscored how one breakout role can overshadow an artist's entire oeuvre, echoing Connors' own lament in a rare interview. "They see my Winchester, but they never read my pen." As the years passed, memorabilia collectors intensified their quests. Dozens of replica Winchester rifles surfaced on auction sites,